Hi, my name is Greg Canty, and I'd like to welcome you to the Win Happy podcast. I love chatting to people from all walks of life about their lives and their careers, about the choices they make along the way to pursue their happiness, and what winning actually means to them. I hope you enjoy these conversations as much as I do. Thanks for listening. Today's guest tells her love story for Ireland, for the man who gave her a lift many moons ago, and for the very special business that they have developed together. On today's podcast, I chat with Sabine Lenz from Germany, who tells that fascinating story, how she met Len, bringing an old ruin of a cottage to life in the most beautiful location, and how they have raised a family together. They also turned a craft jewellery hobby into a successful business, Enibas, with 2 stores in West Cork, as well as a thriving online store. Let's hear from Sabine. Sabine Lenz, a huge welcome to the Win Happy podcast. How are you doing?
Thanks very much, Greg.
Now, the listener doesn't have the benefit of what I'm witnessing. Can you, for 2 seconds, describe where we're sitting?
So we're sitting in my studio that we built a few years back, and we're looking at the wilderness of Mount Gabriel. It's a slightly misty day after a beautiful weekend. That's the way the weather can change here. And what I just love about it, and what I loved when I first came here, the country, Ireland, is that absolute wilderness that looks like it has not been touched in thousands or whatever of years. It's just amazing to have a home with a view like that, really. So we still enjoy it every single day, yeah.
Yeah, and it's wild and it's windy and it feels a bit uncompromising.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. I always thought Ireland is sort of country that faces you with yourself. So you have to be sort of good with yourself to live here long term. That's what I think. That's
interesting.
Yeah.
So you're the CEO and the founder of Enibas? I'm pronouncing it okay?
There's definitely different pronunciations of our company. So it's, I don't know, did you know that it's my name turned around?
Yeah.
Sabine, you did.
I did my research.
Very good. So it's Enibas is what I say, but I know a lot of our customers would call it Enibas. So either works for us, it's fine, yeah.
Whatever you want to call it, if you want to come in and buy my stuff, that's good with me.
And you know what, it's funny, like I just asked you, did you know it meant Sabine turned around, and we still have customers in the shop that would come in, and they might be customers for years, and in conversation you come to talk about the fact that the name's turned around, and they go like, oh my God, I had no idea. It's funny.
Was there a big brainstorm about names for the business? Was there? And
yeah, that was it exactly a long time ago when we looked for a name. I guess I just remembered as a kid we used to turn around names like you do, and I always really liked my name turned around. And then I think it sort of also resonated, had a sort of a bit of a Celtic feel about it, I felt. I don't know, at the time was Enya and all that stuff. By the way, Enya has our jewelry as well, which is funny. That turned out years later. But so we just liked Enibas, so that there we were, yeah.
Yeah, we had a particular dilemma in work where one of our clients, they were changing the name of their business.
Oh, yeah.
And they wanted us to come up with a new name. And he wanted it to be just one word and a bit punchy and all that kind of thing. And we were brainstorming and being quite honest, getting nowhere fast. We had suggested a number of things to him. So, a little secret, I was showering one day. I saw the name of the shower. I reversed it in exactly the same way that you did. And I added another letter onto the end. I never told him how we came about the name, but that's what the company is called now.
That's funny, yeah.
So for anyone listening, if they go through all the possible popular shower brands and figure it out and start reversing them.
Yeah. Words are interesting, aren't they? And I guess that's, just talking about words, that then became a big part of our brand as well. But yeah, that's another place in the story maybe.
So who the hell are you and where did you come from?
Yeah. You know what? It is an incredible story, and anytime I tell it, I'm still not tired of it, because I feel like my personal story of coming here and all this stuff that you're now seeing, the house, the beautiful setting, everything, the shops, it all started from nothing. Really, I was a student in Germany studying fashion design in Hamburg, and I always wanted to go on holidays by myself, and I was a little bit scared. And so I decided one autumn I was going to buy an Interrail ticket, and I was just going to pin it on my wall. So I'm definitely going to do that the following year, just go off by myself. And anyway, the time rolled around, and I decided, for some reason, I guess I needed a change. It was just it felt like meant to be. It was very powerful. So I decided two things. I was not going to wear any makeup on the travels, and I was give up smoking, because I was smoking cigarettes. So it was sort of a shift in life, for many reasons. And I went on that train, and I didn't really know where I was going, because of course Interrailing, you can go anywhere. And I hadn't read a book about Ireland. I don't remember a conversation about Ireland particularly, but somehow I just thought, let's go to Ireland. And then if I don't like it, I'll just take a boat to France and I catch a train there. So that's how I ended up on that boat to Ireland, where I realized that there wasn't going to be any trains in Ireland.
You were a good planner.
Very un-German.
Yeah.
So yeah, in the end, what happened was I met another girl that traveled by herself, and we ended up hitching. I didn't want to hitch by myself. So we're hitching, and the first impression, I just never forget. It was a big lorry that picked us up, and we were sitting in the front of this big lorry, the driver and three of us, and driving along and just seeing the landscape from Rosslare to Dublin. And it was I just felt this instant, really deep connection to the countryside. It was really special, and I loved the place straight away, basically. So we ended up in Glendalough the first night, which was beautiful, and then we caught another lift over to Westport, and I'd fallen in love with the country at that stage already.
Oh my God, you were hooked.
I was hooked from the very beginning. It was really quite amazing. Before I even, saw all this wilderness, which is amazing, because in Germany, wherever you go, apart from the Alps, you just see signs of civilization everywhere. There's lots of people everywhere, and here that wilderness is very special.
And tell me where you were living in Germany. Was that a rural location or was it city? Yeah,
so I would have grown up in what you would call probably in Germany a fairly rural, but it's nothing compared to here. It's it would be this town would have been the size of Cork City. But we were sort of surrounded by nature, so you could drive and there'd be trees and forests, which is the only thing I guess that I miss here, the forests and the trees. Yeah, it was nice, and there was nature, and we would have been in nature a lot, but no wilderness really.
Yeah. And tell me your mum and dad. What did your mum and dad do?
Yeah, so my dad was he was working for the civil service, so he was very sort of straight, I guess. And it was good for him to see that life doesn't always go along one planned path. Once, I came here and settled here and everything. And my mum was a housemaker, but did lots of creative stuff with us. So she would have, done all these pottery courses, any making you can think of, silk scarves, anything at all. And she did a lot of crafty stuff with us. And in hindsight, I think that gave me a lot of my creativity, really, yeah.
Yeah, because, children, and I know we were chatting about children and grandchildren and all that kind of thing. They do soak up what they see, don't they?
Yeah, exactly. I'd never really thought about that, but creativity was always part of my life in terms of, a kid doing stuff. And then in school, I did a lot of art. Art was my direction, really. But I guess, again, my parents didn't like the idea of me going off and studying free art or whatever. There's no money in it, no future in it, and that's...
But that's kind of typical good parenting, I guess. You don't want your kids to be struggling.
Yeah. Done in the best, with the best intentions, for sure. That's how I ended up with the fashion design, which I did in Hamburg, then moved to a big city, because that was a little bit more applicable, I guess, you know.
So that was a practical direction for your creativity.
Yeah, but to be honest, I loved the school that I went to because it was very creative. There was just such a big creative offer, but I never liked the sewing and the pattern making and that sort of fashion-y side of things during the studies. So I think the plan was I was going to become an art teacher after, change direction after that first. That never happened.
At that point of the trip to Ireland, so that was before career really kicked in, was it?
Yes, it totally. I was literally in the middle of my studies and I didn't really know where I was going. In Germany, studies can last a long time. It's not like here, 4 years. It was like you could take your time doing it. And, I was probably already into my 3rd year and I hadn't even done my middle examination there. So I wasn't rushed, I was very alternative, taking things easy, being an artist. And that was my lifestyle, really, Yeah. I mean, you could see it from being completely unplanned about it.
Totally. So in this Ireland where the rail network wasn't as you were expecting, you're going from place to place in trucks and cars and everything else. Do you remember those journeys and what was going through your head?
Yeah, that's a good question. I just remember really liking the countryside, because at that stage I do actually remember as well coming to Ireland. There was this in Europe at the time, even though obviously there was the Republic of Ireland, Northern Ireland, but the Troubles, there'd be a bit of that feel of you hadn't really figured out if that at all affected where you were traveling a little bit. So I remember being sort of aware of that and having some conversations around that, I guess. But I didn't have many lifts before, the whole transition, the journey took a completely different turn. The first was with that truck driver, and I can't really remember much about it except connecting with the landscape. And then we actually got a German, camper van that took us across the country to Westport.
Yeah, and did you stay there for a while, or how long did that first trip take?
Yeah, so we were one night in Glendalough, I think, or maybe 2. I remember going into a pub there, and there was music, and it was just, I loved it, the whole, thing. Yeah. Back then, there was a lot more music, I think, in the pubs anyway, and so I really enjoyed that. And then we went to Westport. We loved Westport. We stayed there a couple of nights, and the plan always was, between me and that girl, we were both sort of doing this, our own traveling thing, and we could split up at any time we wanted to. So that was sort of the deal. But we were together in Westport and stayed there a couple of nights because we liked it. And then the plan was to go to Achill Island next. So we're in the town, walking out towards the road that we knew was going to take us to Achill Island, and hitched. And this Jeep picked us up. And that was my now husband, Len.
Ooh. What was the first thing he said to you?
Oh my God, I can't remember the first thing he said to me, but I tell you this, she sat down with him, the other girl, Katrin, sat down with him in the front. I sat in the back. And I felt, the two of them were getting on great. They were talking about music and all sorts of things. But you see, Len, who has another whole story coming to this point, because it was just felt like such a meant to be thing that happened. He had come to Westport on a break from work. He sort of couldn't get away because he was single and he played music in the pub and whatever. But then he did go, and he stayed in Westport. He drove out of Westport, thought, no, that's not where I want to go. He came back, had a coffee. We both remember, this is before he picked us up. We remember passing each other on the street.
Wow.
I remember him because he's sort of dark-skinned, and I remember thinking, oh, he looks like an Italian tourist. And he remembers me. And then he picked us up, and I'd say within a couple of hours, he'd sort of like fallen for me. Even though I sat in the back and I thought the two of them were really getting on. But, you know, Greg, honestly, it was just, we talked about it actually last night again, knowing that we were going to chat about old times, like how we both never, before or after in our life, felt such a connection with someone. It was so powerful, you know?
So it was the place and him, obviously, both of you. Where's he from?
So he's originally from London. He's a Jewish London boy.
Yeah.
He's a lot older than me. That was the other thing. I mean, I didn't really realize at the time because he looks so young. Nobody ever questions our age difference, which I don't know. Is that a good thing for me?
Yeah. Oh, I think it's a good thing.
Yeah. No, he looks very young. Yeah, he came here to Ireland in the 60s as a hippie. He just had €1,000, and that could be another podcast altogether. And he bought a ruin in the 60s, and, you know, bit by bit, was here probably 25 years when we met. Same thing, really strong connection to here. Lived in Allehes. I had just moved down here maybe a year before we met.
Ah, okay. So he'd been here before you?
Yeah, so he was here 25 years.
So your friend, your hitchhiking buddy, did she quickly realize, okay, maybe it's time for me to move on?
Well, I tell you what, that happened that evening. So what happened was, he decided he wanted to come with us to Achill Island, of course, because he totally already fallen in love with me or whatever. And I offered him to stay. Did he want me to book a place in the hostel? Which he said yes to. So we were on Achill Island, and that afternoon we all did our own thing. He drove down to the beach, and I walked along the beach, and he walked up the mountain. We all did our own separate things. I remember walking along the beach, and, you know, it suddenly started raining, like lashing down. And I just walked in this rain and by that wild beach, and there was no one there. And I just loved that. Again, I had that really strong connection to the countryside and to Ireland, and really loved that nature experience. And anyway, we ended up in the pub in the evening, and there were three of us, and there was this talent show on. I mean, you've seen talent shows before in your time, yeah. So, I mean, that was a completely curious thing for me coming from Germany, because there'd be people coming up on the little stage in the pub and, like, you know, singing, you know, not great. Everybody, great. Da, da, da. I just thought that was fantastic, you know, because in Germany, it's all about, you can only do something. You can only go public with anything when you're, like, really good at it. And it's all this sort of, like, competitiveness a lot. And I just thought anybody going up and getting a clap was brilliant. So I said, the girl then said, oh, she was tired. She was going back to the hostel. And there was Len and I left and enjoying the talent show. That's really why I stayed. And then I told him about the walk that I'd had earlier at the beach. And he said to me, would you like to come with me to the beach after the pub? And I sort of knew this was a decision I was making, because, you know, I had picked up the energy at that stage as well. And honestly, that was it. We fell madly in love after that.
All in?
All in. It was very special for both of us. And that's exactly when that morning I sat down with the girl and I said to her, you know, what had happened and that I'd be going with Len. And she just went on, and we sort of lost touch, which is really actually a shame in a way. But
I wonder how her holiday turned out.
Yeah.
God knows.
Yeah, God knows, exactly. And we stayed around for a few days. We were both in just a very special place together, having just fallen in love madly. For both of us, it was the same. And, I was so much younger, which obviously that shocked me a bit when he first told me. He's only a few years younger than my parents. And, but it felt so right, and we came down here then. He lived in Balderhop in a little flat. And then I just stayed down here then for the rest of the holiday, basically, for a couple of weeks with him. He played music in the pub every few days. I was like, oh my God, that's a grand life,
It's like a whirlwind of a time for you.
Oh, a whirlwind. I mean, it was, it turned out after this whole thing to be very difficult for me as a 22-year-old to really deal with, because it was obviously just, such a deep experience. And then the decisions that come with something like that, because, once I went back, firstly, my parents, of course, and everybody actually that I knew apart from one friend, thought I was absolutely crazy even thinking about this,
And you could nearly imagine having the same conversation with your own kids, couldn't you?
For sure.
Yeah, what the hell?
I mean, 22 years of age to, my daughter, this is like my daughter of 26. I just wanted being with a 47-year-old guy. You know what I mean? But the interesting thing is when Len came to visit, which was like, I think a month after, we saw each other every month, came to visit with us. Might have been around Christmas actually, my parents. And when they met him, they could just see we were so in love, and they really liked Len, and they were really open. That's what I mean, looking back to my dad being so straight, for him to see all the stuff that followed and things that he never could have imagined working out, that had a big effect on him.
What a relief for them. Their little baby was okay. She wasn't nuts after all.
Yeah. I mean, I remember I made the decision then, of course, Len would have never come to live in a city. So, I knew that I had to make a choice. I knew that either I'd come here and give it a go, or, it would just, we wouldn't be together, basically. And that's what happened, basically. We saw each other every month. Either he came to Germany or I went to here. And then the plan was I was going to, the next year in the summer, I was going to come and take a year's break from studies, just to see what it was like. And I could go back and everything. And it would all that'd be sort of two paths that I could go. But I was here in February. And then I went back to Hamburg into my little student flat. And I just thought, let's pack a few things for the summer. And without really consciously realizing, I packed my whole room. And I stood in front of all these boxes. And I just thought, I'm going. I just have to go. I just have to leave now. And that's what happened. I just came here,
So that was a different trip that time. That was, we were saying all in your head, you were coming here for a life, really, weren't you?
Yeah, I mean, definitely, yes, that's so true. There wasn't really the other path anymore, because at that stage, I left my studies just in the middle of it and went full in. And, the other thing is that I said earlier, it was a very difficult time. I went through, I'd say, what in hindsight was a nervous breakdown. I had panic attacks the whole time, and it was just a very sort of dark time for me. But at the same time, my art and having that creative connection, and Len being very supportive through it, brought me through to the other side. And I guess that's another message that I really like sharing, that in those dark times, that just keeping going is in the end going to bring you through.
Yeah. So was that just a storm of confusion, do you think?
Do you know what I sort of compare it to? It feels like, so I was only so young, I was 22. And it felt like I was like a plant that's taken out of the ground, and has lost its roots, really. That's what it felt like. And, I didn't know where my life was going. And it was just really scary. It was just really scary to take such a big step, against your parents. Everybody thinks you're crazy. And that was, at the time, really difficult, being so young. Yeah,
and coming here then to live proper. And we're not talking about coming to a big city. For anyone who doesn't know Ballydehob, it's a tiny little village.
Tiny little village.
In the most southerly part of Ireland. Small country towns and a country attitude as well and everything else, isn't it? Even though I think in these locations they're used to having loads of visitors. So we do have a lot of kind of non-Irish floating around the place, don't we? Culturally, there's a big mix of people down here. But for you, your career hadn't even got going at that stage. So it was, oh my God, what am I doing?
Totally. And in that time in Ballydehob, Lenz had this little flat in the most beautiful surroundings. But I remember he had his work. He was like renovating old cottages, running this company at the time. And so I was alone a lot. And I was walking, and I could be walking on the most beautiful day in the most beautiful landscape, but I felt so dark inside. I remember that so well, thinking, why are you feeling so dark? It's so beautiful here. But it was just that whole new path of life. It was a lot to take in. But I always felt to get through this by myself as much as possible. And you just described the place in terms of the mix of people here and everything like that. And, there's a lot of different types of people. And there was, I saw a shiatsu therapist, for example, who became a personal friend, who really helped me a lot through that time. There'd be so many different people around that you could, and coming from really interesting, sometimes very corporate paths in life that have turned into a really different direction. So I had a few pivotal people back then that really helped me. And then, of course, I got pregnant 3 months later with my first child. So, on top of everything else.
Okay. So now it's a different ball game.
I know,
Did Len know you were struggling?
Yeah. He was there with me 100%, and really supporting me and making me feel okay to go through the whole thing together. That brought us sort of nearly closer in a way. He was thinking actually of buying this property 2 weeks after we met, and he actually took me up here. The place was a ruin, completely overgrown with fuchsia, and you could hardly get to it. This is just the original little cottage that was there. We then extended all around it. But he took me up here and he said to me, Sabine, would you like to live here with me? Because he was thinking of buying the place. This is like a week after we met. And I was like, I would love to live here, because it was my dream. Like, it was a dream for me to live in landscape like this. And so he then bought the place, and we just, in that time, that first 6 months or something after I came here, we were sort of like starting to do it up a little bit, or he bought it. So we knew we were going to live here. And, it just kept me having things to do, because I was so lost at that time, really. And I'd come up here, and I remember, this is me being pregnant. This is me being like 7 months pregnant. And I came up here and dug out the rubble in the little cottage and things like that, and that was good, because it grounded me.
Yeah.
That's sort of what I needed then, is just like the grounding. I was so up in my head, and so it was good, Yeah, it was good to have.
When you do a place up yourself as well, I think you form that relationship with it, don't you? It becomes yours. Every room you paint or dig up or change, it does become part of you.
Yeah, and we've done a lot of that during the years. You're so right.
Blood, sweat and tears.
Yeah. But then what happened to start with is that we just got a caravan at the back, just at the back here, a big caravan. That's where we lived while we were doing up the house. So this is the thing. So we're living in the caravan. And even in the caravan, I was like, oh, Len, let's make this sort of nice. Me and my design, artistic thing. And he goes, oh, it's not going to be worth it. We're only here for a few months. I'm like, no, this is, every day it's about every day making things around you nice. And that's always been the same with me. I just really love doing that. So we painted it yellow inside and whatever. And then my best friend's parents came to visit just after we'd moved into the caravan. It was the summer. And the mother, who I knew from my childhood and everything, came up here and she was in tears seeing me like that. She was shocked. And I was like, because of course we didn't have a toilet. There was like, the toilet was in the shed and it was all very basic. No electricity, nothing. And I was, oh, that's good now, because I know now what to expect when my parents come to visit, which they were coming, whatever, a month later. And, you know, it was so different when they came, which was, again, you know, like I guess I learned so much about my parents during this change and got to know them deeper, I guess, because they came up here and they said, fair play to you. Like, you know, this is beautiful here. I remember still my dad saying, because the ruin was, I think there was not even a roof on it at that stage. And he says, I just can't ever see you live in there. To him, it was, you know, being a civil servant, never having done any, you know, DIY or whatever in his life. He just couldn't see beyond that. And I think for him to see that over the years, how everything has developed, has made a big difference the way he looks at life, really, yeah.
Can you imagine the first moment when he would have had in private with your mum after arriving and the conversation they would have had together?
I know.
Yeah. Oh my God, might have been one of those words that they use in German, I don't know.
Yeah.
Our poor parents.
But you know, he still talks about this thing that I did for him before they came here. I made this little book with photographs of the place and stuff and little descriptions. And this is where we live and this is the bridge and all that stuff. And he said that was so nice for them. That was because he just knew that he could have more of an image of the place, and it wasn't as much in the back of the beyond than it was from, you know, his looking at the map and everything. And then he had a friend, a German, that had been traveling in Ireland and had been to Bala de Hob. And he had told him about Bala de Hob, and, you know, that helped. That helped them, yeah.
How long did you spend in the caravan?
So I was pregnant in the caravan with my eldest Sim, and I gave birth to him in the caravan. So we were in the caravan for probably about a year. And then the house, the cottage, just the main little tiny cottage, Len had done that up, very basic, no electricity, still even in the cottage. But I remember we moved in there maybe in the autumn, and, you know, it'd been plastered and it looked lovely. It was like organic plastering and all that. But it was so cold, you could see the breath. And I said to Len, is that normal that you see breath in a house? You know what I mean? Coming from like...
Yeah, not really.
Coming from comfortable living in Germany in my life, you know?
Yeah, but for the listener, we can't see our breath when we're chatting today.
Exactly, yeah. Things have changed big time, for sure, yeah. But that's how it started, from nothing, really. And it took us about, I'd say, 1.5 to 2 years to get electricity into the house. Maybe even more, because Josh, my second son, was born 1.5 years after Sam, and we still didn't have any electricity in the house when he was born. So, you know, it was hard. You'd have to like heat water into a big bath in order to wash and all that stuff, like in the old days, really. We lived like in the old days. We washed the clothes down by the stream. It was all very alternative and, you know, just close to nature. But Len had lost his job. The company went bust. So that's really how everything started off with the jewellery, because I'd been making bits and pieces as a hobby with a friend, and I really enjoyed the jewellery making. I went to some courses and stuff up in Kilkenny, and this was still, the two boys were still very young at the time. And that's when Len said, we have to somehow earn a living. Why don't we make the jewellery into a business?
Yeah, so that effectively was both your income then at that point in time? Yeah,
so that's... we had nothing else. So we started off we were signing on to start with, which was really difficult for me. And in fact, I remember going to the Joel office here and signing on, which was something it felt uncomfortable to me really, but there was no other way at the time. And the lady that was in there, years later, she comes into the shop sometimes, and I always wonder, did she remember that? Because that's sort of nice, that the state supports people for a period of time when it's necessary, but then you build something up. But that's what happened. We did build it from nothing, and we got a lot of support then from the local enterprise board, and a lot of, long evenings and hard work. And Len, really, he's an accountant and generally a good businessman, and he just guided us, and I brought the creative side of things to it.
When did you know this is working, that we can make a business out of this?
I think what we did is we sold at a market down in the local courtyard. We had a little stand there, so we could see that things were selling. But then we got together with this agent who was traveling around the country, and he got us into the Kilkenny group, and which are like a few shops. And I think that's where we saw, okay, the jewelry is, people are liking it. It's selling in shops. This is really starting to work, and we're going to continue pursuing it, sort of thing.
Yeah, and I think as well as making beautiful jewelry, I think you've got a good marketing head. The branding of the jewelry. I know you've got the lovely collections, but everything. Obviously, the jewelry is one part, but it's the packaging, and it's the naming, and it's the presentation of them. And so maybe that's something you obviously have, because I'm sure there's a lot of talented jewelers around the place, but that don't have that part. And without that part, they're not products, really, are they?
Yeah, and it's interesting. I realized that I had no idea, in a way, when I first started off, that I had all these skills in me, but that's what turned out to be the case. Exactly. Yeah. I mean and there's so many things about it. Just like it's not only about the making, it's about, everything that you create around it. The vision of it, I guess, I really enjoyed building all the vision around it. But I guess now looking back, the biggest thing for me in a way is, and what really made the brand take off, is that connection with the Irish language. Like, I've always used script on jewelry. We did a Chinese range at some stage with little Chinese symbols, and I just loved the idea of a meaning with a piece of jewelry. And yes, used a few Irish words years ago, like just grá maybe, which means love, or And then we saw that people really liked that, and that's when we came up, with our, which now has become our signature collection, really, the creoling, which means a beautiful heart. And that connection, again, I was talking to the connection to the nature and stuff. And I think that connection to Ireland, to that complicated history of Ireland, which includes the Irish language, of course. I came to it completely innocent, not realizing that, just thinking, there's a language here, let's use it. But I think that part of it is probably away from all the things you just mentioned now as well, which obviously have to be in place as well, and which I turned out to really enjoy and be good at. But it is that the meaning of the jewelry is the big one, I think. Yeah. And
would the jewelry have been possible without the house and the location of the house?
I don't know. That's an interesting question. I mean, I feel like the whole thing was meant to be the way it sort of came together, And living here, I think, in Skull and West Cork, where there is such a variety of energies together, I think that definitely, shaped the creativity in me and brought together an interesting mix of things. So, and just, I guess, the whole thing developing here, and actually where we're sitting in this house that used to be the sheds. That's where we used to have, there was these cow sheds here that we had the workshop in when we first started, without electricity, just with a generator.
Oh, wow.
And just that connection to the wilderness, I guess, that you see all around here, gave that space to, I think, discover and go into this energy that in the end created what we have now, which is all these collections of pieces that we know from our customer stories. And when I'm in the shop talking to people, just the meaning behind them is amazing, Greg. Like, you know, what the jewelry has, the strength jewelry has given to people that are going through difficult times in their life or whatever. That is the most, that's what makes the whole thing so worthwhile to me. That's the most important, really, of everything.
It's fuel nearly, isn't it? It's fuel to keep going and everything else.
That's it.
And when did you open the first shop?
Like I said, we started here in the little workshop, then we moved to an enterprise center in Skull, and after that we moved into a shop in Skull, which was, oh my God, about 25 years ago now, I'd say, something like that. Maybe 22, I'm not even sure. And it was a big step, I remember, because we had to get out of the enterprise center. And again, Lenz said, why don't we open a shop in Skull? And I'm like, no, that means the rent, this, that, whatever. I was concerned about all that. And then he again pushed for it, and we opened that little shop. It was across from where we are now. And I remember being in there one of the first days we were open, and somebody came in, a local person, and we were chatting, and she was trying things and everything. And then she was saying to me, Sabine, I really want to buy this piece, by the way, type thing. You know, I was so shy about even that whole commercial side of things. I was very shy about back then.
It's a different ballgame being behind the counter.
That's so true. And the one thing about running your own small business, it pushes you into these uncomfortable spaces where you have to do everything, absolutely everything. And then it's so nice because that's how you develop as a person, don't you?
Did you like that, being behind the counter, chatting to people?
At the beginning, I found it really hard.
Yeah.
But then over the years, I started really liking it as well, because you really connect with your customers that way. You know, and I'd go like, oh, I'm thinking of doing a sentiment, like one was, for example, Light My Way. But I didn't say Light My Way. I said something like The Right Path or something. And then somebody would just come, what about Las Mochli? That means Light My Way. You know, it's just like, I love that conversation. Or then I wanted to do a moment in time one time. You know, a moment in time. It's all about the moment in time, really, isn't it? Say you go to a wedding or whatever. It's not the whole wedding. There's always a moment, isn't there, that you remember. But there was no way of saying that in the Irish language.
Yeah. And running a business in a place like Skull, it's so seasonal. And obviously, you can't take that for granted either, because if the weather is terrible, the season doesn't really happen. And I know you've got an outlet as well in Kinsale, which is quite seasonal as well. I was a retailer, I had record stores.
Okay.
Yeah, but they were pretty much in shopping centres, in city centres. There was Cork, there was Dublin, there was Limerick, there was one in Galway for a while. We were kind of protected because it was like solid traffic all of the time. But being down here and even going through Skull, now you're seeing places opening again for the season. The idea of opening a business for 2 months or 3 months is like, oh my God, how can you even do that? Mm-hmm. How can you even do that?
Yeah. You'd be surprised though. So we're obviously lucky as a business, because the reason that we can keep our shop open 6 days a week, all year round, in both locations, well, especially in Skull, which obviously is quieter than Kinsale, is because we also have an online business. Yeah. And then we make the jewelry at the back. So we do a little bit of interchanging that way. So say the guys in the workshop would do a little bit of the online when it gets busy in the shop. The girls in the shop would do the online orders when it's quiet, you know. And yeah, I think, you know, something about a place like here is two things. One is, it is really nice if shops can stay open the whole year round. And then employment, like we'd like to have our teams to have secure jobs all year round. So that's another reason to keep going everything in the wintertime when it's quiet. And we just think of other projects that we can do during that time. And we would try and structure the business so it more, let's say, revamps or orders coming in would be more during the quieter period of time. So it is a challenge to run these seasonal businesses, because in the summer you run off your feet, and in the winter nothing happens. Yeah.
Putting the head out the door and looking for traffic or looking for bodies. It's funny, I was chatting to the gang in Sullivan's in Crookhaven, and I kind of use the words public service.
Oh, yeah.
In that, as people, we like to pop into town or pop into the village to do a little bit of shopping. It's so much better when things are open, and it is public service. You can't be making money at those times of the year. But it certainly is a decision, I think, that you were saying you're employing people.
Yeah.
But you're giving so much to anyone who lives here. It's a reason for staying here beyond the season. For us, I even told the guys in Sullivan's, it's a reason for us staying during the winter.
Mm-hmm.
When you know a place is open,
mm-hmm.
and if you're cracking up someday, you can pop into Skull and pot around, and it's awful to see the shops closed, but it's so wonderful then to see other places open. That really is so special. So you're 31 years, I think, that the business is going this year. Is that right?
Yeah, very good.
Yeah. So how do you feel about it now when, going forward? What are your thoughts? What are your plans?
Yeah, so I guess we came, the business grew over the years, and I'm now 56. My husband obviously is a lot older. We learned that earlier. He's 77. He looks about 3 years older than me. We are actually, we had to look at the business over the last few years, let's say, and go, we've got a nice business going. We're very attached to it. We'd like it to keep going. What are we going to do? And thinking about, we've 3 children. I also have a daughter who I haven't yet mentioned. She's 26, Analia. And so we just asked, was there any interest that the kids might come in. The 2 boys have their own thing going on, but Anna had an interest, and it really was a pandemic thing. That's what happened. Like you say, everything was at a standstill, and you got to really review your life and your everything during that time. And she was stuck down here with her boyfriend for a couple of years working for us. So then we started the process about 3 years ago with a wonderful succession mentor. And so we're now looking at passing on the business over the next few years. I won't be leaving soon, but I'm in the process of stepping out of the weeds, the operations.
No.
Yeah. It's hard,
Yeah.
It's hard when you've been at it for a long time. Yeah.
Of course it is, but it's your child.
That's it,
Yeah, that needs minding on a regular basis. It's grown up a little bit and matured, but it still needs minding.
Yeah. But sitting here at this couch, exactly where I'm sitting now, about last autumn, I think. And I just when I came here in Ireland and everything just took its natural path. I was sitting here and I knew that the ball had started rolling. I always have this image of pushing a ball of snow up a mountain. It gets bigger and bigger, and it gets so big and so heavy. And then when you have it on the other side, it just starts rolling. And I just said, I know this has started now. It will roll away. It's the right time. Whatever direction, we're not quite sure. But it turned out, like I just said, that, Anna has committed. And I'm now working out of the design studio here, focusing on design and overseeing the transition, because it's obviously a huge transition. Even though we're a small company, we had to put in organizational structures that are different. It's a big shift for especially long-term staff. But together with our mentor and all this, we've really worked on the culture. This is the biggest thing, really, that we are doing a lot of development in exploring how we want to work together and how we want to enjoy all the hours that we spend at work. Because I think, when you're a founder of a company that you build over a period of like 20 plus years, it gets so full on a lot of the time. You carry so much of it for so long. It's hard to even make space for that side of things. So that's been really the focus. And we've got a wonderful ops manager on board that is together with Anna and myself, and then with a whole team really shaping that culture. And that's been so interesting for me because it's been so much self-development and personal development as part of it. Seeing the other's perspective more, understanding trust and how it works and all these little things. I find that work really, really interesting. So I'm doing a lot with that, just working with the sort of key team that we have, supporting Anna really, because I know what it's like to run a company for a long time, and I want to set her up really solid, and that's what I'm going to be at for another few years. Yeah.
I'm thinking of Anna. You said she's 26.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking of Sabine, who was here at 22 in the storm of confusion.
Yeah.
And the circumstances at that time. Can you imagine 26-year-old Sabine being in the process of, inheriting a business or becoming part of that business? It's different challenges, isn't it?
Different challenges. And I'm so impressed by her, really. She's very different from me. In a way, she's better suited to that sort of role of overseeing things because she's calmer than me, and she's very, she's just better at just being in the moment with the situation and calmly overviewing it and making choices. And so I think she's going to do a great job at it. And I guess, we had no money. There was no business there when we first did it. I had 3 small children. So it was a very different thing. So for me, it is important to create that real solid base to give to her. And then hopefully be on board a long time doing the creative side, which is where I came from. And that's where I'd like to get back to. But I am aware of getting it to a stage that is really solid and where everyone working in the company is just really together as a team, we're nothing without our teams, really. So we're very lucky to have great people on board,
Yeah. That is the tricky part, that cultural part. Maybe that'll be your most important legacy, to make sure that continues and having that in place. The 31 years that you've witnessed, what a change for obviously a craft manufacturer in Ireland. Social media, everything going online. Amazon, I think at one point you're competing with the jeweler down the street. Then you've got this wonderful opportunity of online, but then suddenly you're competing with everyone.
Yeah.
How do you view that?
Yeah. There seems to be this sort of idea that, sure, online, that's great. And you've got the online, you're fine type thing. But what I've realized, yes, it's great. We came into the online game really early on. And the pandemic, of course, that was our savior, having the online. We got very, very busy online. But to grow the online, which is the part of our business where the growth lies, that's the challenge now for the new generation coming in. And thank God my 2 sons are in that sort of industry. And that's their challenge now. We have a steady online business, but we know that there's huge potential in the online for us. And that is where all the energy and everything will go going forward. So it's really exciting, The 2 boys are my eldest has a good bit of a sort of background in strategy and overseeing things. So that'll be a really interesting time. And, we're building this sort of key team now. We're able to grow online a good bit. We've got the workshop down below where we could have another couple of people on board if the business was there. And I think there's great opportunities for them there, yeah.
And the workshop is in the store, isn't it? It's at the back.
At the back,
Which is amazing to go in there and wow, there's real people working on stuff back there.
Because, Greg, the reality of the Irish craft business is, of sector is that most Irish craft is actually designed in Ireland but made abroad. And that's the reality of it. There's very few craftspeople that still produce here. And I mean, some parts of our production are, also like we every jeweler in everywhere that produces like quantities of jewelry would cast their pieces, and that's something that we do in Germany. But then all the finishing work is done in the workshop. All the diamonds are set in the workshop or in Ireland for sure. And so that is quite rare really in the craft sector. So yeah, you can come in the shop and see through the window the guys working, making the jewelry there, which is so nice. And we also want to keep going, of course, that side of things.
And if I go into one of the stores or I purchase from one of your stockists, you do experience the display, you experience the person who's serving you, you experience them packaging up what you've purchased, in the lovely boxes and everything else. The same experience of ordering online. I find it's hit and miss depending on what you've purchased, that a lot of people leave the brand at the door, that the correspondence suddenly is cold, that the packaging is quite poor. What do you do to make sure that your brand travels? And when I open the packaging, that I've experienced the Enibas brand.
Yeah. So that's the stuff I really love.
Yeah.
So we did a whole rebranding project actually a couple of years ago, and that was a big part of it, that we wanted to get that experience that people get in the shop, across in online orders and everything. So we worked with an agency to develop the branding, the tone of voice, the whole thing, and also looked at sustainability big time. That was a big part of it. So that we developed a new color scheme and worked with a wonderful copywriter to really get across, because the company and the brand had developed naturally, and we never really, even though we felt it and we were able to get it across in many ways in the shops, we wanted that we needed to really explore that further and understand it and put it into words and everything. So that's what we did. We honestly took about 2 years, I think, to develop that. It was great fun. And on top of that, we also really worked on our process and everything in shops, so that we got that experience of being looked after with any inquiries or, phone, email, whatever, that warmth of the interaction in our shops would come across the same way. And we're making, I think, it's like this building the small things, isn't it? Yeah. It's the small details that in the end make it right. And we make mistakes, and we've made mistakes in the past. But then mistakes, they're with learnings. That's the way we look at it. So if something went wrong, it could be one customer thing that goes wrong. I know the guys will discuss this in their ops meeting, and they will say, what is it that we can make? And it's the small tweaks. And because we built it bit by bit and over time, a lot of that is now right with us. Now there's still things that can be improved. I think it's that people really appreciate that. They can put little gift messages with the gift packaging. And, just the way we integrate them into the packaging now, it's a whole concept, and it's beautiful, I think. So.
And the expectation, of course, of customers now who are purchasing online has gone through the roof, isn't it? We were happy to just get something in the post before, but now our expectations have shifted so much.
But it's interesting. We found that we've got this it's very sustainable. It's all paper packaging, which took a long time to get the right everything for it to be completely recyclable. But we still send out each piece in our standard packaging in a box, in a mailbox, and the whole ta-ta. And we get quite a bit of feedback of customers saying, that's a lot of packaging. Because, it's like, if you order 2 pieces, you get that times 2. If you order 3 pieces, you get it times 3. So this is what I mean about the ever-evolving sort of, in a business, it's ever-evolving, isn't it? Yeah. And so now we have to go like, maybe maybe we need to review that, and maybe it can come still beautiful, but a little bit smaller, so that, because we all the time have to think of our environment. That's number one, isn't it, really?
Because you do want that excitement opening it, don't you? Ooh, this is lovely.
It's to get that balance right,
because you do get those things when you order them, and it's like a huge box for a tiny item, and you're like, what the hell? Yeah, you do get cross then. So getting that balance right.
Getting that balance right, yeah.
And that's shifting all of the time. Keeps on changing. How we perceive things and everything else. It's amazing.
It is. You just constantly have to stay in touch with things, don't you? And go with flow sort of thing,
Yeah, I buy a lot of records, and one of the joys from being in West Cork is the turntable came down here, and sometimes, depending on where you order, you might get a little personalized note, just thanks for ordering, I hope you enjoy it, or whatever. Yeah, this is a really great album, you'll love it, or something like that. The moment you've connected with someone, even when it is an online transaction, if you can maintain that connection at all, okay.
Yeah, that's so
different.
True.
That's different. It's left you with something, which is really important.
Yeah, and all we actually ended up doing is that, I'm glad we're having this conversation, is just a little slip that says this package was packed by, and we actually just, whoever packs it just puts their name into there.
Yeah.
And I think, even that, this is, a person that is behind that puts thought into this being right and all that. Connections. Life is about connections, right? Yeah. And to create that is joy. I love it. Yeah.
So tell me, what's happiness to you?
Happiness. Oh, yeah. What's happiness to me? It's, happiness is being in the moment in this beautiful place. Happiness, like, strip it away. Happiness just being, and having this experience of life and being able to be merged with it, I guess. Yeah. I'm very happy when I work in the garden. I love gardening. And when you're in the garden and you just, you have the earth and you just connected with that sort of thing. It's the same for designing. When you were just really making, it's actually more when I make his jewelry or whatever, I'm just completely delved into and connected with the experience. That's happiness, really.
It's your happy place.
That's the happy place, yeah.
And then, of course, I talk about winning happy, and I use this analogy of, you might love playing football, kicking ball to each other, but if there was no goalpost, it would become a bit pointless.
Okay.
You might get bored. So for you and your goalposts and that feeling when, oh yes, I got a goal, what gives you that feeling?
What gives me that feeling? Yeah. I think it's beauty. Like, i.e., natural beauty as well, but also creating beautiful spaces, beautiful things. Like my husband, Len, he'd always go, you've always got new plans, you always have new ideas. And my son, Josh, who's also really creative, we try to explain to him, it's just a kick that you get from even in your head designing these beautiful things, and they might never happen, but it's that, oh, that'd be really nice. Or, that vision and then sometimes you do it and it's great. And yeah, I think that gives me a kick, and I love it. I absolutely love it. Yeah.
And you were speaking earlier about happy moments. Did you say that was part of the collection? Did you call the collection?
I wanted to do it, a moment in time.
A moment in time. Okay. So what was your best moment in time?
My best moment in time. I don't know if I can have a best moment in time because there's good moments. There's several good moments, isn't there? But my deepest moment in time where I knew that was just a very significant thing was when I met Len. When I guess when he took me down to the beach and kissed me as soon as I came out of the car. But it was just like so raw and so like I don't know how to explain it. It was so like meant to be. It was so deep that, because happiness, I was actually, when I sort of thought about the happiness podcast, I did think a little bit about what is happiness, because like you could say there's happiness and there's sorrow, whatever, you can have opposites. But really, and you might say, oh, I'm happy when this and that and whatever. But what is actually like happiness? It's like when you strip away the outer stuff that might give you happiness. What's actually inner happiness? What is happiness that you would have even, when you go through a hard time or whatever? And I think that's really interesting to explore that in oneself.
And I don't think we ever fully figure it out, do we?
Yeah, no, it's not a head thing, is it really? But it's nice to bring that up. I don't know how other people look at it that you interview and stuff, but I thought it was an interesting sort of concept to think about more, and I'm sure you do, because that is obviously what the podcast is called. Yeah,
exactly. I think it's a bit like your garden or whatever. It's a work in progress, and for me, you keep on tweaking, changing your life, making decisions. Maybe I will stay in this country after all.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe I will stay in Westport for another few days. Maybe I will go back down to the beach. Yeah, it's complicated.
It's complicated, I know, yeah. But that's the thing. It's nearly like, I think this is what Ireland has for me and why I actually am so happy. I always say, even though I had this really hard time when I first came here, you know, but it's because I went through this, because I was able to face that and really go through that and then come to the light in a way. And I always now say, God, I'm so lucky that I was able to go through that, because imagine I wouldn't have done that, and I would have probably ended up, I was never happy in Germany. I felt really unhappy, actually, felt fairly unhappy, like, i.e., heavy in my heart, like physically. Even as a child, I always thought that was just like normal, But when I came here after a few years, that just completely left me. And I've since always felt light. And I think that, like, Ireland as a country has something about it. I don't know if you find that. You're obviously from here, but you've traveled a lot, maybe. Yeah, I find it exposes you a little bit, and it makes you reflect on that space that is right now the experience.
It's a special country, but I think without doubt West Cork and where you chose to live is pretty amazing, and it does something to people. Mm-hmm. Some people run from it, definitely. Mm-hmm. But for others, and you kind of get that when you see how many people who aren't from here, who are living here.
Exactly.
That's not an accident.
Or would have traveled, like retire here, but would have been able to retire anywhere and would have traveled all over, which of course then the other side to that is, and you know that as well, how hard it is now for younger people to start a life here, and how the villages, we want our young people to come back here, but it's just so difficult, isn't it?
Yeah, it's very tricky for them trying to get a place here.
Yeah, exactly.
Sabine, thank you so much for coming on the Win Happy podcast.
Thank you, Greg, for asking me. That was a really lovely conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Win Happy podcast, which has been brought to you by Fusion Communications. If you'd like to get in touch, feel free to send me an email at greg@fusion.ie. So until next time, take it easy.